next part of our session today is so that you don't leave thoroughly depressed, to consider the question of how we find and ensure a positive and achievable future, that it's not all doom and gloom, and there are things that can be done to mitigate and to adapt. So we're going to have a few sessions in this part of the program. First of all, the panel discussion, where we're going to have Runa, Philippe, and Kathy back on stage this time to look, having spoken about the front line and the experiences of people who are living this firsthand, to try and figure out from those stories what can be done to help us adapt to what is certainly a troubling future. We're also going to hear from Carlos Moreno, who's the co-founder and scientific director of Entrepreneurship Territory Innovation Chair at Paris One, and he's considered one of the leading specialists on urban redesigns, and he's going to be giving us an idea of what the city of the future might look like. We're then going to have a panel discussion with Jean-Laurent Cranier, who is the CEO of Generali in France, and Kirsten Dunlop, the CEO of Climate KIC, and the idea of this session will be really to consider how financial and economic institutions and those worlds can help see us through and adapt to the future as we've been describing it. So would you please help me in welcoming once again to stage Runa, Philippe, and Kathy. Thank you. So Philippe, maybe if I start with you while we settle in. You were telling us some stories from farmers on the ground. What are they already doing today that gives us an idea of what resilience looks like even?
Sure. I mean, I think one thing is regenerative agriculture is always very context specific, so there's no one-size-fits-all solution. But one thing that is always in common is a strive for diversity. If we look at nature or any natural context, you would never see a monoculture field or a monoculture forest. This is something that man made for efficiency reasons, and we reached the end of that. We're seeing right now that through that efficiency, we build fragility, because if you have only one plant, then that plant is of course very receptive to one predator, one bug, one disease that kills all your crop. So generally, we're always working with farmers to diversify the operations, and I believe that the future is polyculture farms. So we will be moving away from an arable crop farm or an agroforestry farm towards a polyculture farm that integrates trees, year crops, and also animals.
That's fascinating, because I didn't understand that the agriculture we used to in Europe, these monocultures, are actually unsustainable long-term because fragile if efficient. That is fascinating. I'd love to come back to in a second. Runa, you're talking about risks, opportunities. What would you say is the biggest gap between what we know and what we're doing?
Well, I think the biggest gap is how we approach, and that how we approach is right from political will to donor wills to how, when we step into a community, we take along with us all the words that actually mean something, like localization, like locally adapted solutions. Then indigenous people know all the solutions. We have to listen to their needs, because they cannot always give us what is the right solution. They can only tell us what they deeply need and how they would deal with it. And from there, we know what we would be capable of doing. For example, if 20 years ago, I had gone to the field and I asked these people who had never seen a doctor, what do you need? They would say, when we are sick, we need a doctor. But they would not say that you can reach us through a mobile hospital, which will bring us care. Yes. I had to put together what my ability was, what technology we could use, how we could do it. So it is a question of us respecting them, to understand, to listen to what they say and what they don't say, and find out the solutions together.
That's fascinating.
And this is very important.
Fascinating. Kathy, to you. You gave us the idea, the story of Yamame. Tell us what her story tells us about the scale and the urgency of the climate crisis.
I think many of you heard me say that 60% of the income of the traders is lost from extreme heat. 60%. So just in terms of the scale, there are 42 markets in Freetown. Freetown is 1.3 million people. Those 42 markets have about 2,000 women in each of them. There's just the scale of one city. And so think about the 772 million women in the informal economy working in extreme heat. And when you add formal economy workers like women in Lake Charles, Louisiana working in the seafood industry in the heat, it's 1 billion women. And that's just the women. So the size and scale is almost hard for us to understand, but the solutions are increasingly showing evidence, and the cost-benefit analysis for understanding if I invest this much in this solution, this is what I can expect back in either increased productivity. You know, if you think about garment factories, in garment factories, the factory floors are hot, and so the productivity is down, and nighttime temperatures are so important, and when we lose sleep at night, you have productivity losses in the day, and it's not surprising. And those losses are at about $250 billion every year just to the US economy. And so it is massive impact, and so it's in every supply chain, in all workforce, in informal and formal economies, working labor markets, and so it is silent and invisible, and yet so magnificently impactful. And so all of the solutions, and just as Runa says, co-created solutions. One of the most important parts of adaptation is it is not a one-size-fits-all, and why adaptation is a challenge, can be challenging for financing, is that it's just not like it goes here and here and here and here. It has to be localized. It has to be
And
tailored.
why it's so complex, of course, Kathy, as all of you have illustrated in what you had to say. The question of the individual and the scale, the question of the practical solutions that you bring to people. What you were saying a moment ago, Philippe, about the monocultures is fascinating. Give us an idea of that question of scale and how we find these solutions without losing the local relevance that you need to keep.
I mean, that's the big problem that we're having right now, right? We see farmers are realizing that we have ended the industrial agriculture era, but they're stuck within a system that was very much designed by the agrochemical industry. So just to give you one example that we're having there, in the European Union, and what I'm saying is always for the European context, we have the Common Agricultural Policy, which is giving 440 billion euros in subsidies to farmers over 7 years. Right now, these subsidies are mostly given out based on the size of the farm and the yield that they're having. So obviously, farmers are optimizing for yield at all costs, which means they're buying chemical inputs, which are further destroying their soils, but they're helping them to increase their yields, which they need in order to keep the farm profitable, because in the end, they're all businessmen. At the same time, we have massive damages due to the effects of our agricultural system. We had, just in 2023 alone, we had 400 billion euros in damages due to floodings in Europe. So if we would be navigating the money that is going towards reparations from floodings and droughts towards supporting farmers in the transition to regenerative agriculture, we would actually be able to reduce it. But the problem is the agrochemical industry, and specifically Bayer, BASF, Syngenta, they would not be making the profits which they're making right now. And so the largest number of lobbyists in Brussels is coming from Bayer. And that is the issue that we very much are having, is that we are working with the farmers, but that the system that they're in is not supporting the regenerative agriculture system.
And that's a fascinating point, because it's that question of systemic, holistic change that society needs, and that's really, really hard to achieve or even to work towards, because it's a question of understanding the urgency. I suppose, to you, I'd love to know about what you think the single solution that we might look towards that we're not yet looking at might be. What would you say?
I think true cost accounting. I think if we would actually be living in a society where every company would have to account for the damage that they are causing to our planet by doing what they're doing, that would automatically mean that the most sustainable product is not the most expensive one, but the cheapest one.
That is,
so if you're sourcing something regenerative, you're actually supporting planetary recovery. but you actually have to pay more than if you buy meat from a feedlot, which is causing suffering for animals and suffering for the planet. How fucked up is that? That the right decision is the more expensive one.
And you know what, listening to you, I'm pretty sure every consumer would be into that. Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yes.
Exactly.
Runa, the same question to you. What is the single solution, do you think, that should be considered that society is not really looking at or ready to look at?
You know, when you are going project to project to project to project and you're jumping and you have put in a lot of money, it's not necessary that that is going to really be, you would be able to scale that. Because scaling takes, you know, there are 100 million, there are 8 billion people in the world. 8 billion people have different kind of reactions to things. So it's not a factory for scaling. Because every time you interact, it's a different person, different environment, different culture you're interacting with. Therefore, it's the principles of how you should scale. You have to ensure that there is trust between the lives you touch and when there is trust, then whatever you tell them, they start internalizing. Unless the communities, the people, when you walk into a total different environment, they can internalize what you have, what you tell them, and it's not just the project will end, you've done your ticking, and now you can expand. It doesn't work like that. The people have to accept they need the right thing at the right time, in the right amount, in the right way. Then they will see, oh, there is a change in my life, and they start making their own decisions. Exactly the same when you think that you have a solution and you want to scale. That doesn't work. You have to be respectful enough that you need to again interact, but ensure that unless, you can be rest assured, that unless there is trust, and the trust comes with ensuring that there is human dignity which you give and you receive, and then you walk in and it works. So we scaled from 1 hospital ships to 7 hospital ships. Just literally, I was sleeping in between, you know? I didn't have to go and be there. It was the people, because they understood that one works so well, and we could internalize, we accepted their difficulties. So scaling is absolutely, it's mandatory that you work towards working and they start trusting you. And then when you become an example, scale can happen. The government trusts you, donors trust you, because you are transparent, you work with values, and then there is, and you can make changes, because every time you put in a little bit of work, a community, there is a difference in that community. So you have to be able to navigate and be agile. And you need trust with the donors so that the donors agree to your changing what you're doing. And this agility amongst all the different stakeholders is extremely important for
and that crucial question, Runa, of trust. Kathy, I'd love to ask you a similar question. The idea of these individual stories that we've heard to scale without losing local relevance. What do you think needs to be done with regard to that?
I think we have to start with women. All of the data supports that women are better risk managers, that women are, when they're on boards of companies, those companies make more money, that women together on boards are managing environmental, nature, and other risks better. They're, as leaders, investing in environmental early childhood education. They sign more treaties with other companies, other countries. Women leading the countries during COVID had fewer deaths. Women leading countries have fewer carbon emissions. Women are powerful leaders. And the fact that bias against women is so strong that we'll go against our financial interest is gobsmacking. And so the solution is to have women at the table and to put trust for financial and public leadership in women.
I think it is such an excellent point. I spend so much time doing these conferences on sustainable agriculture, the future, climate change from across the world, and it's the one thing that comes back all the time, and it's astonishing that it's taken this many millennia for us to realize it. Kathy, let me start with you then. Closing thoughts, because we're going to be running out of time. I'd like to know from you maybe first, 1.5 degrees Celsius, we're heading beyond that. We now know that, it's been established. What does a resilient future look like to you?
A resilient future looks like every individual having the climate literacy they need to prepare for, withstand, and recover from inevitable shocks that are coming, and that they have the capacity to do it. That is resilience. It is not these big programs, and it's not multilateral banks and their investments, and it is in the communities, within the families, within our own neighbors. One of the biggest drivers of our survival in a disaster is whether or not we know our neighbor. It will be community, capital, and our own ability and capacity to understand, prepare for, and live through and thrive in what is coming.
Same question to you, maybe Runa. I'd love to know what you think beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius resilience looks like.
Okay. I have a little problem with this word resilience, because resilience often connotes that those, I will not say responsible. I mean, in the world, there's no blame game here. We just need to use our conscience to be able to put the developing countries and developed countries together. We need conscience. So resilience, I don't want someone to say that the people in the field are so resilient, our hands off.
Yeah,
we don't have to do anything more for them.
Yeah.
All
done.
So this, so I have a problem with this word. But, however, to build resilience is to ensure, and this is deeply, I am speaking to governments, and I'm speaking to donor agencies, and I'm speaking to people like us on the field who are delivering, all of us. We need to build capacity of the people in the field so that they can restart their life. I tell my people that those in the hospital ship, do not put them under a bureaucratic system, because when the storm comes, you are not there to be able to go 14 hours to save them.
That's it.
They need to have enough
to save
confidence in themselves
Yes.
to be, and you have to give them the responsibility as leaders in the organization, that they make decisions without feeling scared that they're making a wrong decision. So they have to take it in their hands. So resilience is to ensure that you can build a deep, humane capacity of the people who will take the next step forward, who will have to survive and to live.
Here. So. Philippe, same question to you. Beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius, what does it look like?
I love what you were saying, and I think I very much agree. Resilience comes through diversity. Diversity on the fields, and also diversity of people, right? I think I love ChangeNOW because it already brings together tens of thousands of people. But in the end, we still need to go from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions, because within the bubble, we're not going to change things. And in the agricultural world, for me, this is more and more about raising awareness that every human being is eating every day. And so you're taking a crucial decision for our planet every day by the way how you're sourcing your food. And yet most people, even in the climate bubble, are going to a supermarket and are buying conventional food. And through that, massively contributing to the destruction of our planet, essentially. And I think just to bring that awareness in, that what you eat and how that was grown or sourced is one of the most crucial things that you can do for your own health and for planetary health. And to spread that knowledge is, for me, one of the most important acts that we can do.
That's fascinating. In the last half an hour, we've learned so much. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.